The Data Chief is a podcast for data and analytics leaders to share their personal stories and insights on technology, culture, and leadership. Welcome to The Data Chief.
The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot, the AI-powered analytics company. With ThoughtSpot's user-friendly platform, anyone can leverage natural language search and generative AI to uncover actionable data insights. Whether you're a seasoned data analyst, a business leader, or product builder, ThoughtSpot empowers you to effortlessly interact with live cloud data, generating granular, hyper-personalized insights in real time. Learn why customers at Cigna, Just Eat Takeaway, and Capital One trust ThoughtSpot to drive business outcomes with data. Visit ThoughtSpot.com today.
Welcome to the Data Chief. I'm your host, Cindi Howson, and today we have two incredible leaders joining us. Roisin McCarthy, founder of Women in Data UK, who is passionate about empowering women in the data and AI space, and Robin Sutara, field CDO at Databricks, whose journey spans from fixing Apache helicopters to leading in the data and AI world. We explore how to get the best talent in our competitive data and AI space, while also ensuring an inclusive workforce. At a time when AI is increasingly ruling our world, the risk of bias at scale reflects the reality of the lack of diverse talent in our industry. This is one reason why I'm so thrilled to share that ThoughtSpot is sponsoring the Women in Data event in London, a force of over 4,000 women and male allies, and I look forward to seeing many of you there. So let's dive in. Roisin, where in the world are you joining us from today?
I'm just outside of London. I'm about 30 minutes south of London, Cindi, in a very wet, cold place called Basingstoke.
Okay, it'll be sunny when I come over. No worries, right? I've learned to always bring my brolly, no matter the forecast. And Robin, you have lived around the world. You travel frequently. Where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, super fortunate to actually be home today, I think, for the first time all year. So out in Seattle, Washington, where it is actually dry this week. So relatively chilly, but dry. And I'm super excited to be here. So thank you. Okay, good. And I don't think I'm used to saying I'm joining from Delaware, my new home, where we still got 6 inches of snow yesterday. But there you have it. So let's move past the World Weather Report. Roisin, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about why you founded Women in Data over a decade ago now. What inspired you to start this organization?
Cindi, the story is quite a personal one, actually. And yeah, it was a decade ago. So in my day job, the one that I was doing then and still am now, I run a recruitment business. I've been placing people in data and technology for 25 years. That recruitment business was having a super year back in 2014. And I was really looking at some of the push and pull factors and the impacts of what was making things so successful. And then without any specific requirement in reporting, I decided to add gender into the year-end report. And what I learned at that moment in time, Cindi, changed my world forever. Truly and utterly a moment that really started everything. And what I learned was that I placed less women than I had done 15 years prior. And not only did I place less women, I was placing more people. So there was seriously something at play. So I spent about 6 months going and researching what was happening. And I spoke to a specific selection of individuals that I work with on a daily basis to understand what these push and pull factors were. And what I learned pretty quickly was women weren't joining at the same rate. Their careers were stagnating faster and they were leaving industry to not return. It was a perfect storm of problems. And the reason that I actually started Women in Data is that I took this to dinner one evening with my mum, Cindi, and over a glass of wine and a lovely meal, I was reciting the stories that I'd heard in the research, and I was sharing these stories of women being usurped and their careers stagnating and frustration and so many personalized stories to the point that I was in tears. And my mother said something to me in that moment that resonated. She said, Roisin, put up or shut up. You're the most connected woman in data. Do something about it. And she meant it wholeheartedly. There was no sympathy for it. You feel for it, do something about it. And Women in Data was born. I connected 125 women in November 2014. We now represent the interests of over 80,000.
80,000.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to pause on that. Repeat that. 80,000.
80,000 in 120 countries.
That's incredible. And so we have to thank you and your mom and your mom. I also think it's useful to hear your perspective. You have placed thousands in the industry at all levels. Is that right?
Yeah. From entry level and graduates through to chief data officers and C-suite execs. And interestingly, the C-suite execs of today with the graduates I was placing 25 years ago, right? So I've grown up with them as I've grown through my career. I've had the privileged position to watch theirs. So yeah, I've seen quite a bit in a quarter of a century.
Yeah, but it's quite a broad perspective you have. So at different points or different stages in people's careers, I think is very important. So you're seeing the job descriptions, how people are recruiting, and also who's getting them. So, Robin, let's shift to you. Your career is so fascinating. Kind of take us through your beginning and where you are now.
Yeah, I wish I had had somebody like Roisin to help me grow up. It was definitely not an easy journey. I think even for the people that Roisin works with, right, as we sort of go through those different phases. So I actually did start my first grown-up job, I guess, was in the U.S. Army, repairing Apache Helicopters, electrical and weapon systems. So it was. I had started university for computer engineering, ran out of funds to continue school, so enlisted, and wanted to stay connected to technology in some way. And that was the job that I was fortunate enough to be placed for. In that role, I was stationed in Korea, and Microsoft came out with this new product called Excel. And nobody knew how to use it. We were going to use it to track Apache helicopters, the parts and the repair, the maintenance records, etc. And because it was typing on a computer, everybody said it was a girl's job. So I got to be the one to figure out how to use Excel and how we were going to track. I think they all regret that decision now in hindsight, but it was a phenomenal opportunity to use one of the most powerful databases of the time and figure out how we were going to sort of track that. And I said, when I did that, I'm going to go work at Microsoft. And they all sort of laughed at me saying, yes, sure, that will happen. So as soon as I got out of the Army, I studied for my Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. While I worked at Radio Shack doing computer hardware repair. I got a call on a Friday night from a recruiter from Microsoft who said, we're hiring for IE5 support on Windows 3.1. Can you come interview? I said, sure, but I have my 2-year-old daughter and I don't have anybody to watch her. And they were like, bring her with you. It's like, are you sure? She's 2. And they said, absolutely. So I brought her in with me. Despite the fact that she dumped her Coke and cookie into the interviewer's purse during the middle of the 8 layers of the ODI model, I still got the job offer. And so just a phenomenal opportunity. I then spent the next 23 years at Microsoft, starting there on consumer support, moved into enterprise support. And about halfway through my career, I then got into the data space at Microsoft. So essentially got to manage a team of phenomenal analysts who were looking at data sets to then make recommendations inside the company of how could we aggregate that data and now change internal processes, organizational design, products, how we were delivering in this space for our customers. I worked my way up from there into the Chief Operating Officer of Azure Data Engineering, which is a phenomenal data product consisting of 27 actually distinct products at the time. And then ultimately finished my career with Microsoft as the Chief Data Officer for Microsoft UK, where I had the phenomenal opportunity to connect with women in data. Today, I am with Databricks. I have been with them for about 2.5 years. I started in London. I'm now in the US. And what I get to do is travel the world and consult with organizations that we're working with on how to make sure that they're being successful with their data and AI strategies as we think about not just the technical platform, but also people, process, organization. And so I'm just super excited to see the opportunity that we have as we think about communities like Women in Data. How do you actually expand those across my customer footprint? Because they all have talent. They're all looking for incremental diverse talent. And so it's a great opportunity for me to play multiple hats in that function.
Yeah, for sure. What an amazing journey, Robin. And I knew that you and I shared some similarities in our roles and how we interact with customers, but I hadn't realized that we shared some similarities in our early stage journeys, although mine was a little earlier than yours because I was the Lotus 123 macro queen. Excel came later, and also building computers. But you said something that if we record this on video, people would have seen my mouth just drop open. So entering data or working with the computer was a girl's job.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
Yeah. Because people thought it was typing, right? So, and it was very much, much to their chagrin. I say my career has now gone full circle from Apache to Apache. And I bet every one of those guys that I worked with is now regretting the fact that they didn't step up to learn a computer.
Yeah, interesting. And of course, I have to say thank you for serving. And also, when you were describing this, you did pursue a degree in computer science. And Roisin, in your work, your Women in Data puts out a phenomenal state of the data industry. And you've noticed how people have had non-traditional entryways into the data world. So hearing Robin's journey, is this traditional? Is this non-traditional? What do you think?
I think that there's no doubt Robin is a pioneer and somebody who is trailblazing for sure. But what I'm definitely seeing in trend and in reality is that we're seeing transition happening, Cindi. We're seeing people who are now considering 2 and 3 careers within their working lives, and they're proactively transitioning into the space of data and tech. So yeah, I am seeing it more often, I'm pleased to say, because we've got a problem, right? We don't have enough people to serve the requirements and demands and the solutions that we need to be delivered. So I'm thrilled to say that whilst Robin was probably unique across your peer group, I think it's more reflective in the newer joining individuals coming into this space.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the proverbial elephant in the room. I am joining you from across the pond in the USA. We do not want to get political on this podcast, but DEI programs, largely in the US, but also through some activist investors, are under siege. And people are saying, this really became reverse discrimination. What does this mean for groups like Women in Data?
I think that we certainly we were holding our breath over the last few weeks and what the impact would be. As an immediate reaction to the here and now, Cindi, what we are seeing is demand upon our services grow exponentially. So our membership has grown and spiked, and particularly in the North America region and territory. We're seeing some of our partners who are based and have HQs in the territory double down in their investment in DE&I. It's an interesting place for Women in Data to occupy, and we really do occupy the space. However, it's not it's not a cornerstone of our mission. Our mission is gender representation, and gender representation is 51% of the population. It's not a diversity question. So I think that whilst the benefits and the impacts and the brilliance of DE&I initiatives absolutely play very much hand in hand with what the work of women in data do, it doesn't directly affect us because we are not a DE&I organization. We're a gender representation organization.
Yeah. And I think it's important that, so at your conferences and your communities, the male allies who are often the decision makers and people in power and the hiring managers are part of your community. Is that right?
Absolutely, Cindi. We can't affect the change that this mission is so focused on reaching if we don't have everybody at the table. A little bit like the solutions that we build, the teams that we're creating. We need everybody to help drive the solutions forward. And it was an early recognition that we couldn't be female alone in this. And
Right.
you're absolutely right. The individuals that are often in the senior roles, and we know that the occupational role is around 80% male at the moment, certainly in the UK, of these senior level data driven positions, we need to bring them on the journey. It's absolutely imperative. We cannot ostracize, we cannot isolate.
Yeah, for sure. So if you take the perspective of a data and AI leader who is looking for talent, tell us a little bit about some of the trends that you're seeing in the workplace. How do we leverage this talent? Where are they coming from?
We're seeing a real mixed story out there, Cindi. I think that I genuinely, in 25 years, haven't seen as turbulent of jobs market in data and tech than I have in the last 24 months. It's been up and down like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I can't keep up with it, and I wouldn't be in the position to make predictions here on where it may go next. But we are seeing a return of high demand. And that high demand is around a segment that is always in demand and underskilled and underrepresented once again. And it's the mid-level technical capability that exists in businesses. It's the hands-on delivery aspects. We are seeing also in some of the senior leadership and the senior echelons in our industry an over-index of representation of people in the market, Cindi, which is really interesting. And then my biggest challenge and what keeps me awake at night is that we simply do not have enough people coming into industry. Regardless of gender, let's take that away. We do not have enough qualified individuals coming into the workplace in data and technology to undertake the predicted demand that will hit us in AI and data and technology in the forthcoming 5 years.
Yeah, the predicted demand and even the existing demand. There was a statistic in your State of the Union, 68% of decision makers are struggling to fill these critical roles in data and AI. And you mentioned the mid-level being a particular challenge. What are you doing to address some of these challenges, or what do you think some of the root causes are? Is it that they're coming from non-traditional backgrounds, so maybe they don't have a computer science degree, and yet HR recruiting teams just always require the HR or always require the computer science or the data science degree, and maybe that's not where they started?
Cindi, it's really complex, and there isn't one intervention that's going to solve this. We talk about the transitional skill set and what's happening. We do have traditionalist ways of recruiting still by majority out in this marketplace. So there will be a criteria that individuals have to meet. They have to go through a specific process to secure the job. The reality is so many of those upfront processes aren't required. The list of requirements aren't required. And that is a true challenge when we're trying to pipeline talent in. So I think the barriers are still very much up. We need to really look at how we are encouraging talent to consider the roles, because it isn't a shopping list of skills that means somebody's credible to be the next data scientist, etc. So that's one element, how businesses are approaching how they recruit. And I think that often what happens is, particularly in enterprise businesses, data leaders or data leadership get the headcount. They've been fighting for the headcount and the resource for such a period of time. They get it. and they go to market in a panic. there's no eventual planning that is event planning that is put around the process of obtaining the talent. And what I see happen often is organizations remove that headcount because the talent opening has been open for such a period of time, and the teams have survived without it. I think that there's an afterthought there, and I think that organizations are missing a trick by not putting event planning of recruitment processes into their requests earlier on. I think that also that organizations are traditionally recruiting and attracting the talent through traditional methods. Now, a snippet that we know from our Women in Data research is that women are 3 times more likely to accept a job, Cindi, based on a recommendation or a referral. And that is so important if you're looking for balanced shortlists. If you are only going to market through a job advertisement, through a known platform, or through your own website, the reality is you're going to have a biased or a male-lensed shortlist for interview. Yeah. And that really is a challenge for many organizations, that they're not looking at different methods in way of attracting. These people exist. We have 80,000 of them as members. The reality is organizations need to think differently to be competitive, to have that incremental advantage in attracting best-in-class talent.
Yeah, so multifaceted. It's where you recruit. It's how you recruit. It's the gates that you put in the job requirement list. It's the networks. I often think about, are you playing golf or having a beer at the pub? And if that's the only place that you're recruiting, you're not going to bring in diverse talent. It's a selection bias right there. The other thing that Women in Data focuses on, you have a goal for closing the pay gap or getting us to pay parity. What is the data telling you? Where do we stand? Are we making progress?
From a societal level, we're over-indexing in performance here. We're going in the right direction. But this is a new industry. You know, when we compare it to heritage professions, medicine, law, accountancy, and beyond, this is a new profession. We should be doing better. Our report tells us that we're seeing an average of around 9%, which is certainly lower than the workforce average. I think that the one thing we're in danger of doing, though, is losing that advantage or losing that headway, because by the pure number of individuals coming into this sector, we're seeing some elements of and discipline of data representation going backwards. So ultimately, we are going to create, in the next 5 years, by the entrance into the profession, we're going to create a bigger pay gap for ourselves over the next 5 years.
A bigger pay gap. I don't like that, Roisin.
No,
I don't like that. Okay, that's not okay. And I do want to say, so 9% in the UK, and at least there are ways that the UK requires reporting on this that the US does not. But even in the US, according to different salary surveys, the pay gap in the data space is between 11 and 15%, depending if we're looking at just base salaries or also bonuses. So that it's getting worse, that's not good news.
Well, it really isn't. And I think that the game-changing opportunity here is that pipeline of talent in. If we can balance those coming into industry, we've got a chance of balancing that pay gap further down the line. And this, we've got to do it with future thinking in mind. We've got to future-proof this. There's no point reporting backwards on this. This is about what is going to happen 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. And it's now we have to act to affect that change.
Yeah. So, Robin, let's shift to you. You've risen through the ranks in both the UK and the USA. Roisin shared some of the challenges that she's seen from an industry lens. How have you personally overcome some of these challenges, or have your challenges been different?
I don't know that I've overcome those challenges, to be honest with you. I think there are absolutely systemic things that exist across the ecosystem. I'm just always struck by, right, just this, like Roisin was saying, how do we solve it at the beginning of the pipeline, at the beginning of careers? I think it's fascinating, particularly in the US. Think how many times you went for a role or went for a new job and they said, how much do you want to be paid? It's like, what's fair? How much should I ask for? I don't even know what the right amount is. One, because it's definitely not an open topic that people discuss their compensation packages in a way that allows transparency to say, did I ask for the appropriate amount in the very beginning? And so we in the US have now seen sort of this move toward meritocracy as opposed to right, sort of performance, this whole performance based as opposed to being equitable at the very beginning. And I just think that means the system is broken. And if I think back to my own career, how many times I thought the system is broken, like because I started, at Microsoft for less than 50,000 a year in the late 90s, doesn't mean that 2% year over year is going to now bring me equitable to what's fair in the market. And so if I think about my own career, what are the things that I can fix in the system? What are things that our allies can fix in the system? So stop asking women what they want to make and pay them fairly from the very beginning. Make an offer that's equitable based on their experience, their capabilities, their competencies while you're bringing them in, whether they're traditional or non-traditional, there is some level of expertise that you're bringing into the system. So offer them a fair pay from the very beginning that's equitable with the men of similar experience and capabilities that are existing in your organization. Let's get rid of the disparity from the very beginning. That means hiring fresh talent out of university or fresh talent out of the market who are doing career pivots, offer them a fair wage from the beginning. Then you can do meritocracy because everybody started at the same point. If I start 20% behind my male cohorts, doesn't matter how much you reward on meritocracy, I will never catch up. And so I think sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, Cindi, but
good.
I truly
Yeah.
believe like it's up to us as leaders, it's up to our allies as leaders. You have to fix the system. Stop expecting women to fix it themselves. Fix the systems, fix the processes, and that's on all of us.
And Robin, I think I would add into that in the sense of, as the individual, we can take responsibility. I know in the State of the Nation report, we saw that of the people that didn't receive a pay rise in 2024, 8% who had gone back and asked, got a pay rise. I mean, there's money on the table. I'm not suggesting there's a lot of it, but you've got to ask, and we've got to take that responsibility to do so. We can't sit back and expect people to deliver us what's fair.
Yeah, so it's both. I think it's both. And Robin, I do think a lot of the pay disparities start with that first job. And you're right, you're just getting a 2 to 3% raise. And this is why a lot of women have to leave to get fair pay. We had a CDAO, Dora, describe a moment when she even brought data to negotiate the pay. And her boss did not have a positive response, and she left and she got even more than what she was asking for. So I think there are lessons to learn both for the managers, but also for women. And this is where I will say, do as I say, not necessarily as I do, because I am terrible at advocating for myself, but I'm great at advocating for my teammates and other people. So I say, when you're negotiating for yourself, try to think of you're negotiating for your best friend, because you would probably do a better job for them or for one of your teammates. I wish the managers would just be fair, but sometimes they're working on a budget, and it's and maybe we don't have great data here either.
That was the other thing, right? I think, Cindi, that's a valid point. Like, we across the ecosystem should take the responsibility to share the insights so that people can be prepared, like Dora was, to have data-backed ask. I think more women would be more comfortable advocating for themselves if they knew that it was grounded in fact and data, as opposed to right? The casual conversation over a glass of wine with friends. Like we want to be more concrete than that. And I too am the same way. I don't advocate for myself. I tell every one of my team members that report to me, my goal is that I report to you tomorrow, right? And so what do we do to make that happen? How do we grow you? How do we develop you? And we've got to treat it the same way when we think about pay disparity, and how do we create that open ecosystem so that we are building each other up, we're lifting each other up in the process, as opposed to, right, just trying to think about ourselves or just trying to think about our team members. And we've got to aggregate that in a way so that we can be data driven in these types of asks and decisions.
Yeah. And Robin, you also described something with your job interview, bringing your daughter to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a moment of both joy that I'm so glad you did that and that you were in an environment that supported that. But I also had a conflicted feeling because, so for me earlier in my career, there's no way, like if I was picking the kids up at the bus stop, I lied. I said, oh, I have a meeting at 3:00, can't make that call. It was really this separation of the worlds. And I think that the pandemic has changed it a little bit also for our male allies who are experiencing having that time to be more involved. Do we still have work to do here, that there is not this bias or stigma of people are caregivers, whether it's children or their parents? Is the work environment getting better here for both men and women, or do we still have work to do?
Tons and tons of work to do. What I'd like to really see come into effect is standardization of maternity and paternity leave. And, that being shared and organizations making it standardized, because once again, we're coming back to that entry point of equity. The entry point of equity in childcare is incredibly important. And I think until we see that equity, the rest won't follow line.
Robin, is there anything you want to add from the tech sector perspective?
Yeah, I think my case of bringing my daughter to the interview is super unique, right? I don't know in hindsight that I ever would have done that. And similar to you, throughout my career, I absolutely would not tell people if I were doing something that were related to the family. In fact, my first manager role, I was told by the team I was too robotic because they had no idea that I had children, that I had a family, right? I just blocked that part from my personal life. I do think as I have grown up in my career and become more comfortable, I've been able to share a lot of those things because it does make you human. It gives you connectivity with your organization, with your peers, with your leaders, if they sort of have that realization. And I do think post-pandemic, it has become much more not appropriate, but common that people will share those things, that they have other commitments that they need to take care of, whether it's a child or a parent or a dog or a doctor's appointment. Or I think people are much, much more transparent about that because the lines between work and life became very blurred during the pandemic because you never turned off. You were always on. And I think, as we think about some of the things that Roisin referred to around things like parental leave, there are still, again, I'm going to go back to systemic issues that we need to think about how to fix. That is like policy, that is implementation and execution of that policy, right? The Nordic countries do this very well. It's equitable, right? Both parents get the same amount of leave in some of the Nordic countries. In the UK, it's not quite to that parity, but they are definitely making strides. We've seen significant improvement based a lot actually on the work that Women in Data have done and the organizations that they support and sponsor to get that done. In the US, I think we still have a long way to go. I remember when I had my first child, it was 6 weeks of paternity leave for the mother, right? And so literally, like, we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go.
We do have a long way. So slow progress, more recognition. And I would also just say, to me, the more we can talk about it, rather than being afraid for everyone. I love it when somebody says to me, Cindi, can I ask you a really embarrassing question? I'm like, yes, if we talk about it, then we can figure out what are these systemic issues. So let's shift a little bit. From with Gen AI, boy, the innovation, I love it. What a great time in our industry, but also a pressure cooker of people having to learn faster, pivot faster, find better talent, skilled talent, when these technologies didn't even really exist or were not mainstream 2 years ago. We're asking people to do more with less. And there's a lot of discontent out there that is also leading to this job attrition of our top performers. Roisin, what are you seeing? What is your data telling you about some of the causes of this discontent, and what do we do about it?
Well, it's definitely speeding up, Cindi. Just to give you a data point, when we go back to the early days of my career, the average tenure in a job was 6 years. 6 years. It's now 14 months. So the speed of change there is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I think that your sentiment there, Cindi, about, we're asking people to do more with less is absolutely on point. And I would suggest that if you speak to most CDOs, most leaders in this space, that is their biggest pinch point. Not retaining then what they do have in losing battle on talent, and having to perform to show the value quickly. We're hearing it time and time again. One of the aspects that we read from the State of the Nation told us that the individuals in their role with data leadership, so looking up the hierarchy, said that quite often their leaders were incredibly stressed, their leaders were unresponsive, their leaders were unavailable, as some of the feedback that we had through. And I think it's because the pressure point is there at the top of the tree for sure. And that, of course, like any good organization, every action has to start at the top. This filters through. But what I would say, Cindi, just as a counter to that, and there is a mixed view, our women in data community reported back that by majority, they were actually exceedingly happy in their day-to-day work. They love what they do.
Yes.
They love it. And that, for me, it gives us all so much hope that we can, whilst there's those fires burning of love and absolute engagement for this profession, we can change things.
Yeah. So a lot to unpack there. 14 months. Wow, that is a lot of turnover. And Robin, as you know, in advising CDOs and being a CDO yourself, Randy Bean's survey is like for CDOs, it's just over 2 years. I think it's gotten shorter now. And it sounds like the CDO is getting hit from all sides. They're getting pressure from the boards. What's our AI strategy? Deliver the value. They're getting pressure from their teams who are job hopping and experiencing burnout. What are some of the best practices you've applied in your role or that you're seeing with your customers?
Yeah, I think some of the really great organizations that I've had the chance to work with here at Databricks are thinking about, one, how do you leverage technology more effectively or efficiently to help your teams? If I think about the future and where we're going and sort of those capabilities, a lot of it will make some of these mundane tasks relatively simple. So how do you position your organization as innovative? So you're not coming in to do some of the really difficult tasks that you've had to do in the past. And how do we help train you and enable you to be able to do that? And I find Roisin's fact of 14 months fascinating because it takes almost 12 months. If I think about every role I've ever done, the first 12 months is just trying to figure out the landscape, who are the players, what are the politics, how are we going to execute, building out the plan. Yes, I have a little bit of a plan going through the interview cycle, but to actually now start to execute on that plan, it takes you a little while just to get your feet going and moving. And I think lots of CDOs struggle with this a little bit in that first year of you're trying to figure out the culture of the organization. Are they really ready for transformation? Do you have the talent to be able to deliver that? All of that is oftentimes a lot of change that the organization is going through to actually execute against that. And so at the same time, you're now having, as a leader, to create this culture of you want to keep the great talent that you already have and bring in net new talent. And so how do you make sure that you are viewed as innovative, that you're driving things forward at a pace that they're not going to get at other organizations, and sort of create that culture of bringing that around. And I think all of that is putting even more pressure on data leaders to figure out how do they do that and how do they execute against that. Those that are doing it really well have clarity on, right, this is the innovation that our organization is doing. This is what we want to be able to deliver to our customers or our citizens or our whoever we're serving, to be able to provide these net new services. And you, candidate, have all of these ideas that are going to bring in, that's a new point of view, a new perspective. And this is why I think the non-traditional paths are phenomenal, right? To bring somebody in that it either has this industry experience or a relevant industry experience. I can't tell you how many times, Cindi, I'm sure you do this, where you connect customers that they're not competitors, they're not in the same industry, but they're solving the same problems, from retail into manufacturing, or from, right, pharma into right. I did a beer processing solution and shared it with a pharma company because they were both working with yeast and trying to figure out how are they going to solve some of those. So there's just so much synergy. I think that we could help organizations innovate faster if we bridge that gap. And the organization has the capability to do that too. Hire talent that's not currently in the ecosystem. Bring in people with a different perspective or a different experience or a different capability. You can teach them technology, right? We can teach them technology at some point. And so what is harder to teach is that knowledge that's going to help you solve those problems or innovate at a pace that you want to.
Yeah, so a lot of it's culture, leadership, thinking differently about recruiting. But Robin, you also said something that I want to touch on, and that is working with modern technologies. People want to be learning the new.
Yeah.
And I think of organizations who have legacy tech stacks versus modern tech stacks. Why would you want to go work for a company that mainly has legacy tech? And I think that companies are hesitant to talk about what they're doing, either because maybe there's some confidentiality and they want to maintain their competitive advantage. But I think it's a useful recruiting tool. How do we overcome this?
I have that conversation almost every week. Like, let's talk about what you're doing on Databricks. There is such a, I'm going to do a little plug for Databricks now, right? There's such a demand from the community that want to learn and get their hands on this product, and sort of the innovation that we continue to do on a platform. I can't tell you how many people I have come to me to say, who is using Databricks because I have gotten my first certification and now I want to go get my first job in this space, but I want to work at a company that's leveraging that technology to innovate. And so who is that? So I feel like there's such an opportunity for us to figure that out. And how do we get organizations just to say, this is broad scope what we're doing? Like, it's not the old legacy on-prem data warehouses or databases that you're used to. We are innovating. I had an opportunity to talk to, for example, one of the British rail companies who we did an interview on LinkedIn, super informal, super casual, because he then started to talk about what were they doing around computer vision on the tracks and all of this data science work that they were doing to reinvent the way the British Railway was providing services, yet nobody knew it. Everybody viewed it as a very legacy. His whole team was 20 plus years tenure, right? And he was trying to bring new talent in, but nobody viewed that industry as innovative. So how do we create more platforms and more opportunities for organizations that are viewed as legacy or traditional or historic to share how they're thinking, where they want to break into the right sort of this pace of innovation that they want to deliver? Give them a platform to be able to share those things, and they should proactively take opportunities. Speak at things like the Women in Data event.
Yes.
Speak at things like Databricks events or right, Microsoft events or AWS events. Like, there's all sorts of opportunity where people want to hear from others in the industry and what they're doing, and you don't have to disclose trade secrets. Just talk about how you're innovating and how are you leveraging tech to do that. And every entry level person or every person that's trying to get into the field attends those events, and they listen to those stories and they make their decision where they want to work or where they want to apply to. I applied at Microsoft because of Excel. I mean, really, let's really think about it. Technology will draw talent to you.
For sure.
And so let's figure out, how do you share that?
Yeah. So a lot of exciting ways that companies can get their stories out there, but also use it as a recruiting mechanism. Roisin, when we think about generative AI for recruiting, you have shared with me that you're seeing some people write the job applications with generative AI. Is this okay? She's covering her eyes now. Is this a good practice, or why or why not?
It is if you're not using traditional or mass market available technologies to do it. I think that I was shared with you, Cindi, a story that I had in the last week, and a client had come to me to say, Roisin, I cannot fill this role. I haven't had anybody apply. And they sent me over the job description, to which I was absolutely horrified, which had been clearly created by some generative AI tech. I'm not going to suggest which one I think it may be. And it was horrifying. The bias that was in the spec straight away, the shopping list that was created, the lack of knowledge that the Gen AI had on the firm to provide a pitch for them. I just was horrified. And I did ask him if he had read it, and the answer was no, because he trusted the tech. And human in the loop, Cindi. Human in the loop.
Always, yeah.
This is an incredible data professional, let me add, but felt that it had been brought to him. Whether he wrote it personally, I don't know. But the reality is that you need to put the human in the loop. And yes, these things are there to speed up processes. And don't get me wrong, I lean on these techs as well. Women in Data have been building a piece of technology that will help organizations put speech to spec, remove the bias from job descriptions, and allow you to create a reflective environment and pitch for your organization. So I think that Gen AI tech is there for so many things, as to Robin's point, to really take some of the heavy lifting out. But when we're looking to build inclusive teams, diverse inclusive teams, I think that we just need a bit of a sense check and ensuring that we've got the human in the loop. Particularly also when we're looking at systems that provide or push talent towards us, they have inherent biases built into them. And you will find that you will get one type of demographic of a candidate because of the way that it's attracting the talent. So, I think that people should be wary when using tech and always keep an experienced recruiter in the loop.
For sure. So we need the humans plus AI. Robin, you are working for one of the hottest companies in our industry. If you think about what are some of the most exciting trends, more specifically, what excites you about the industry right now?
Yeah, I just think that the potential is phenomenal, right? I do think a lot of these traditionally difficult tasks are starting to be more automated. So things that we're really working on are how do we help simplify things like data ingestion, data engineering functions, so that we can release some of the limited amount of talent to go work on the really complex issues and get some of the simple ones off of their plate, which I think is another great way to bring in new talent to be able to learn the really complex sort of points of view. I think we continue to see the market move toward solving for some of those foundational issues, breaking down the silos. Super excited that today we've announced a new SAP on Databricks version, which is going to unlock the power of all of these organizations' SAP data, which has historically been really difficult to get out of the system and aligned and connected with other data sets to actually transform. So I think we'll continue to see that type of information of the industry moving toward how do we actually unlock the power of organizational data to help with AI? So it's going to become more simplistic. I think the barrier to entry, we're going to focus a lot more, continuing to focus on natural language like most technology platforms are, so that we can get rid of 20 people trying to answer one question for the CEO. And can the CEO just ask the question himself?
Yes.
And we have confidence in the system. Unlike poor Roisin's job description, can we actually have confidence in the system that he can ask about the outlier sales point in UK in 2020 and he get a real answer that he can depend on. So I am super excited about the continued progress that we are making toward really helping organizations unlock the power of their data. And I think there's so much opportunity for Gen AI to help us do that from a technical perspective. That doesn't mean that we don't focus on the people and process. I still think 90% of it is people and process. And how do we make sure that people are enabled? And how do we enable them in a way that allows them to use the new technology? And again, there's so much opportunity. I just am super excited about the future. And I do think it offers us more opportunity to better balance, to create equitable teams so that we have the opportunity to do that.
It sounds like a wonderful future for sure. So let's pivot to a lightning round. Short questions, short answers. Everyone ready? Roisin, we're going with you first. A go-to song that pumps you up.
Well, it is Women's History Month here in the UK, and we've got International Women's Day. It's Any Case, Here Come the Girls.
Oh, good. Robin, your secret to maintaining a healthy work-life balance in this fast-paced world?
Everything gets put in my calendar, including showers and workouts.
Well, and I love your LinkedIn profile. Is it one sport is not enough or something like that?
To do triathlon training as much as I travel, it has to go in my calendar. If I don't do it, it's just never going to happen.
Oh, that's awesome. Robin, what's at the top? Sorry, I messed that up. Roisin, what's one skill or area of knowledge that you're currently focusing on developing?
Trying to teach my 3-year-old to read and write. She's nearly 4. And this is not something that I understood how to do 3 months ago. It's a big learning.
It is a big learning. I'll send you my favorite books from that stage. Robin, what's at the top of your bucket list?
Oh, yeah, I'm super fortunate that I've done a lot of things, but I would love to go to Australia or New Zealand. That's the one area of the world I have never been to. I've been everywhere else except there. So.
I can name a few events down there. Great. Roisin, a podcast or TV show that you just cannot miss?
Well, clearly this podcast, but and the Women in Data's podcast. But Yellowstone, I'm obsessed. Obsessed. I don't know what that says about me, but I'm obsessed.
No, it's good. And I always like to close out. You can decide, choose what you're feeling, your mood in the moment. So, Robin, either what are you most grateful for, maybe beyond health and family, of course, or something that has totally made you laugh out loud of late?
I am most grateful actually for the Women in Data community. I continue to think the mission, the charter, we're expanding in North America. And so I am super excited for the future. As you mentioned early on in the pod, right in the discussion, Cindi, the need and the desire, I think, for women here in North America is just going to continue to grow. And so I am super optimistic that we have a great opportunity in front of us to continue to bring the community together. Your next job is through your network. And so let's figure out how to help build that network, build that community. It has been a lifesaver for me to be part of the community. And so that's what I'm excited for.
Thank you. Roisin?
She took my answer. And absolutely.
That's okay then.
I absolutely concur. She said everything that I feel so lucky to have such an incredible group of individuals around me for not just the day job and not just the great parts of the community, but also things outside of the day job, you know, whether it's marriages, divorces, births, deaths, the WID community are there. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, well, we are grateful that you both shared your insights on the podcast and frankly, all you do for our industry in your respective roles. Thank you, Roisin and Robin.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Data Chief. Want to learn more about today's guest, recommend a future guest, or listen to more of the show? Subscribe to the Data Chief podcast on your favorite podcast player, connect with Cindi on LinkedIn, or give her a shout on X at BI Scorecard. The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot. Putting humans at the center of data-driven decision-making doesn't have to be complicated. ThoughtSpot makes it easy. With ThoughtSpot, Anyone in your organization can intuitively answer their own data questions, find facts, and make better, faster decisions that drive real business value. Learn how companies like PepsiCo, EasyJet, and Electronic Arts have sparked their data renaissance at ThoughtSpot.com.